Stop scrolling because this really matters. Breaking news into the Don Lemon Show newsroom. Gavin Newsom says Donald Trump's Justice Department is now investigating him and his wife. He says federal agents have been contacting people around them, friends, staff, people in their circle. Haven't even told them that there's an investigation. Why? Because the punishment is the process. And Newsom is saying that this isn't about a specific crime, that Trump is, and the DOJ, they're looking for something to charge him with. One, he says that he believes is to tarnish him for 2028. Look, you don't have to agree with Gavin Newsom to understand what it means. Even if Gavin Newsom is going to run or not run in 2028, this is ridiculous. If a president can direct the Justice Department towards a political opponent, that is a line that should not be crossed. Trust me, I know. For more on this story, check out the Don Lemon Show on YouTube and Substack, or click the link in bio.
So to be clear, the next president, whether it's President Newsom or someone else you think, needs to elevate the debate, but also ensure accountability, legal accountability for anyone who broke the law.
Yeah, I think you have to knit that back, and you have to do both because you by definition are doing both. It's not weaponizing grievance. It's not pursuing retribution in the spirit that defines Trump and Trumpism. It's not about vengeance in that respect. It's not that. It's simply about accountability.
What's up, family? Hit the like button, share the video, subscribe to the channel. So Gavin Newsom just held a press conference on the verge of tears, telling the world that Donald Trump is coming after him and his wife. This is the same man who spent years running on throwing Trump in jail, going after Trump's family, promising accountability for everyone in Trump's orbit. But now that the spotlight swings his way, suddenly it's a revenge tour. And here's the part that really got me. Even CNN had to pump the brakes on his story, and we're going to break this down. So here's what Newsom actually said. He stood at the podium and told people that federal agents have been knocking on the doors of family, friends, and former employees, not because they found a crime, but because they're out here fishing for one. He called it an abuse of the grand jury process.
In recent days, federal agents have knocked on the doors of family, friends, and former employees, not because they found a crime, because they're simply trying to find one. They're demanding records. They're abusing the grand jury process, digging through years and years of random documents. Donald Trump isn't just coming after me because of my mean tweets. He's coming after me because I'm considering running for president, because he hates that I've consistently called him out over and over again for his lies and deceit. Donald Trump is simply the most corrupt president in American history. He's turned the levers of government into his own personal power ministries to reward cronies and to try to jail his opponents. His personal attorney now runs the Department of Justice, which has repeatedly gone after his political enemies. Ask Jerome Powell. Sent them after James Comey, Trish James, Adam Schiff. He sent them after Tim Walz, and a woman that a jury found Donald Trump had sexually abused. One by one, anyone who has challenged Donald Trump has ended up on his hit list. And today, I proudly join that list. After calling for my arrest last year, Donald Trump directed his Department of Justice to investigate me. And just in the last week, I've learned that his campaign has reached my own home. To get me, he's coming after my wife, Jen, a public servant, a woman who's dedicated her life to supporting women and girls, someone who has done nothing wrong other than having the temerity to advocate for what she believes in. If they can't intimidate me, they'll go after the mother of our children. Donald Trump picked the wrong target. We have nothing to hide. His political operatives can take every record and read every page, but they'll be looking in the wrong place. Because if they really want to find corruption, look no further than 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. I'd like to say something to my wife. These times are not normal. They're not ordinary. I love you, and I'm sorry he's doing this. You have not earned a single one of the indignities that he's trying to inflict on you and our children. And to Donald Trump, this country does not belong to you. It does not belong to your cronies. And we're going to fight your lawlessness. And we're going to continue to remind the people of this country of your corruption. That same corruption our founders warned us against as we move to celebrate our 250th anniversary. I'm going to keep reminding Americans of what they warned would happen if a man with no character ever held the office of presidency. So let me say it again. Mr. President, come after me. I'm not going anywhere, and the country is watching.
So there you have it, right? He called it an abuse of the grand jury process. Again, like I said, he said Trump can't intimidate him directly. So Trump went after his wife instead. And then this is the part where it got real theoretical. He turned to the camera, looked right into it and said, "I love you. I'm sorry he's doing this to you," quote unquote. Now, look, I'm not here to tell you what to think, family, but I need you to think about think about this for a second. This is a man who literally campaigned on locking up his political opponents, who told voters for years that accountability has no zip code and no party affiliation. And now in the moment questions start circling people in his own house, he's standing at a podium with his voice cracking, asking the public for sympathy. That's a choice, and it's a very specific political choice. Democrats love this move, family. Anytime there's an investigation, anytime somebody in their circle gets a knock at the door, the first stop isn't a lawyer's office, it's the camera. Because if you can make the investigation look like the crime, then nobody asks what started the investigation in the first place. But here's where Newsom's story started falling apart in real time. CNN's Paula Reid went to her sources the moment Newsom dropped that video that I just played, and what she found out doesn't match what he was selling. According to a source familiar with the matter, there is not a direct investigation into Newsom himself. What's actually happening is that there are several investigations into people connected to the governor of California, Gavin Newsom. And that includes one investigation into his wife for potential tax-related issues. If you don't believe me, I will show you in regards to the tax-related issue I'm talking about before we get to this clip you see on the screen with Paula Reid. I want you guys to check this out.
Busy. She reportedly paid herself a massive paycheck while pushing controversial sexuality and gender education in California's school system. The New York Post is reporting Siebel Newsom leaned on her powerful husband and his education board to push preachy flicks about toxic masculinity into classrooms, all while raking in up to $300,000 every single year through her nonprofit, the Representation Project, and her for-profit outfit, Girls Club Entertainment. The report goes on to say Newsom's Board of Education recommended Siebel Newsom's films in controversial health education guidance in 2019. Shortly after he became governor, that guidance was later adopted by the state education department and sparked some heated debate for its focus on sexuality and gender identity. Teaching manuals pushed by Newsom's Representation Project include materials like this. Look at your screen. That's a diagram labeled the gingerbread person, used to teach middle schoolers about terms like pansexuality. The revelation comes amid a crisis in California schools, of course, with a recent report card finding 44% of California 11th graders do not meet reading standards. Nearly 70% were below par in math. We've reached out to the governor's office for comment. We're waiting to hear back.
So there you have it, family. That is the potential tax-related issues with Gavin Newsom's wife. The investigation is occurring about. Now, let's get to CNN with Paula Reid, and we'll go from there.
We do have some breaking news now. California Governor Gavin Newsom claiming that he's under investigation by the Department of Justice because he is considering running for president.
He says in recent days, federal agents have knocked on the doors of family, friends, and employees. Here's part of a video that Newsom posted online.
The White House has become a marketplace for sneakers and coins and watches, cologne, guitars, Bibles, and phones. Influence for sale, access for sale. And today, my family and I can personally confirm that justice is for sale. To Donald Trump, who I know is watching because he watches everything, I have a message for you. You can subpoena my records. You can investigate me. You can harass me. Put my name on every and any enemies list you have, but leave my wife and family out.
CNN Chief Legal Affairs Correspondent Paula Reid joins us now. Paula, what are you hearing from sources about this?
So, Boris, after the governor made this announcement, we took a few minutes to call our sources, figure out exactly what's going on here. So I want to lay this out for our viewers, what we're learning. Let's start with this announcement by California Governor Gavin Newsom. He says there in that video that the Department of Justice is investigating him. He claims that President Trump is targeting him as a political enemy. Now, we know the president has been very clear that he wants his Justice Department to pursue his perceived political adversaries. So an announcement like this seems to fit in that pattern. But in speaking with our sources, we are told by a source familiar that there is, quote, not an investigation directly into Newsom. Now, that is attributable to a source familiar with the matter. We are told that there are several investigations into people associated with the California governor. These are being run out of a U.S. attorney's office in California, including one investigation into the governor's wife for potential tax-related crimes. Now, we also know from public reporting, public happenings, that Newsom's former chief of staff pleaded guilty to 3 charges related to a scheme to steal campaign money from the former Secretary of Health and Human Services. That is a case that has been widely reported. We are told, though, that the Justice Department, the political appointees here in the Justice Department in Washington, were not involved in the origins of this investigation. This was all, we are told, prompted by a whistleblower report in 2025. Now, today, the governor's office said that federal agents have contacted people and organizations connected to both the governor and his wife. They allege that they have issued subpoenas for records and conducted interviews related to years of personal and professional activity. Now, in recent weeks, Newsom's office said the federal probe expanded to focus on his family and professional network. So here we have 2 different narratives, one coming from sources here in Washington saying there is no investigation directly into Newsom, then the governor releasing this video insisting that he is being targeted by the president. Now, based on our reporting, it does appear that there are investigations, that there would likely be interviews with people connected to him. But again, a source suggesting he is not directly the target of an investigation. But as we know, the Trump Justice Department has pursued many of President Trump's political adversaries. So there is certainly a concern around the potential weaponization of the Justice Department, and we will continue to talk to our sources. We're not going to let the governor control the narrative or just rely on 1 or 2 sources here in Washington. We'll continue to figure out exactly what this investigation covers.
Yeah, where does this go from here? Because we are at this point getting this story and the narrative, I should say, from the governor. Where does this go from here, Paula?
Before Paula goes on to answer where does this go from here, Paula Reid also confirmed something else that you guys just heard that had already been reported publicly. Newsom's former chief of staff pleaded guilty to 3 charges tied to a scheme to steal campaign money. That case exists. That's real. And it connects to the broader circle of people around this governor. Think about what that means. You got your former chief of staff pleading guilty to stealing money, and your wife being looked at for potential tax issues, and your response is to hold a press conference calling yourself a political prisoner. That's a stretch, family. That's a long stretch. And the fact that CNN, which is not exactly a network rooting for Republican talking points or just journalism in regards of just spewing the facts and letting the American people decide. Instead, they always operate in their narrative of bias. But for CNN to go on air and say, wait, this isn't exactly what he's describing, that tells you something. When the people who would normally run cover for you have to slow down and say, hold on, the story you're telling doesn't fully line up with what our sources are saying, you've overlapped your hand. You overlapped your hand. Newsom came out swinging and landed on his own narrative instead, right? And let's talk about Jennifer Siebel Newsom, because Gavin keeps telling us she's done nothing wrong, his wife. And I think you deserve to know what, quote unquote, nothing wrong actually looks like on paper. You guys heard it from the clip I showed you. She runs 2 organizations. One is a nonprofit called the Representation Project. The other is a for-profit company called Girls Club Entertainment. And according to reporting from the New York Post, she was pulling in up to $300,000 a year between those two entities, while her husband sat in a governor's mansion. Now, $300 a year through a nonprofit is not illegal on its own, but it does raise a question worth asking. What exactly was the public getting in return for all of that? Here's what this actually looks like in real life. Newsom's own Board of Education recommended her films in 2019, right after he became governor. The state education department later adopted that guidance. And what did that guidance push into California classrooms? Gender identity and sexuality curriculum for middle schoolers, including a diagram of the called quote unquote gingerbread person, used to teach kids about terms like pansexuality. And that's what got recommended. That's what got adopted. And his wife's organizations were at the center of pushing it. And I'm not here to debate the culture war piece of that right now. What I want you to focus on is the setup. Her husband is governor. His education board promotes her films. The state adopts the guidance, and she's collecting up to $300,000 a year while it all happens. In the same period where all of this is going on, 44% of California 11th graders can't meet basic reading standards. Nearly 70% nearly are below in math. The kids needed reading. What they got was a pansexuality diagram. You tell me if those priorities line up. And now, when somebody starts asking questions about the money in the records, Gavin Newsom wants to make it about Trump's revenge tour. That's the move. Don't look at the setup. Look at the person asking about the setup. But here's what gets me, family. These are the same exact people who spent 4 years telling all of us loudly, repeatedly on every network that nobody is above the law. Tax records, hand them over. Business records, open them up. Personal finances, transparency for everyone. That was the standard they set. That was the line they drew. And it was drawn specifically around Donald Trump and everyone connected to him. So I need someone to explain to me why that standard evaporates the second it points back at them. Mind you, not to mention that they're open and not even hiding it anymore. They're just open out with the corruption. I mean, give you an example of Ilhan Omar, the representative that represents Minnesota. She still hasn't handed over her, finances or the paperwork in regards of the oversight committee over there in Congress. And that fraud speaks for itself. Governor Tim Walz, he has been quiet. So the reality is these things been happening before our eyes, and they're openly doing it. And then when paper trail comes to show proof, they still want to run with narrative. But the simple fact is you did it to yourself. So Donald Trump is just proving the very thing that you're doing loudly out in the public in the smack of an American people's faces. You're spitting in American people's faces, aka American taxpayers' faces. Like this money, as you being a public official, is yours for your own self-enrichment, whether that's your family or whoever by association. And that's just wrong in general for any politician, left or right. I think we all can agree on that. But when it's Trump's orbit, you get full investigations, maximum pressure, wall-to-wall coverage cheering on it. And I'm just being objective here. When it's Newsom's orbit, suddenly investigation is harassment. Asking questions is an attack. I just find it very off or wrong that if you would disagree with someone, it leads to violence. If you ask questions, you are to shut up and be quiet and go along with whoever says what, and basically take whoever talking points or whatever they're saying, and you're not allowed to utilize your own critical thinking. I mean, what happened to back when in middle school, who, what, why, where, right? What happened to those critical thinking processes or steps? Now it has become where you disagree with me, violence. Or you're not saying what I'm saying. You're not a yes man for me or a yes woman. You're a problem as well. Censor. hush up. Your voice don't matter. How can we really have growth with that type of dialogue? It's one-sided, right? So the governor needs a podium and a camera to tell his wife he's sorry. That's not accountability. As he says, accountability is important, Gavin Newsom. That's a two-tiered system dressed up in emotional language. And the people who built that system are now the first ones crying when it touches their front door. If you got nothing to hide, you don't need a press conference. You cooperate. You let the process work and the truth comes out on its own. The panic tells you more than the speech ever could. The same way it was the panic with Ilhan Omar. Same way it was the panic with Governor Tim Watts. And in a way, Governor Tim Watts conceded and actually worked with ICE. So that tells you right then and there how that happened, because he ended up working with the border czar and getting Minnesota together. So let's continue to watch this clip, and then I want to wrap it up. But I want to get you guys' thoughts in the comments. Get this video a big thumbs up if you got some value from this video. As always, we're just having a conversation.
Well, I think the next round of questions are likely to come from lawmakers. We know the acting Attorney General, Todd Blanche, has been nominated to be Attorney General. He's expected to meet with lawmakers on the Hill. It's likely he's going to face some questions about this from reporters on the Hill, from those lawmakers. That's one opportunity he will have to potentially go on the record about this. The Justice Department, again, this just broke a short time ago, also would have the opportunity to go on the record and clarify or respond to this. At this point, the Justice Department has not released a statement. Neither has the FBI, all declining to comment, as they do when it comes to ongoing investigations. No one's saying there's no investigation anywhere near him. It seems that the difference in interpretation is whether this is directly into Newsom, as he has suggested, or as our sources suggested, this is into people associated with the governor. And this also connects to previous criminal cases, including his former chief of staff. So at this point, this is where our reporting stands. We have one narrative coming from the governor's office. He's saying that he is under investigation. He's being targeted as, quote, a political enemy. We do know that as a thing that happens at the Trump Justice Department, but our sources are telling us that he is not the target of this investigation. The other thing I will say, after over a decade of covering politically related investigations, is that even if you start talking to someone, that doesn't mean that whatever they tell you may not eventually lead you to investigate someone else. So the fact that they're talking to people in the governor's orbit, that is significant, and that is something we are going to continue to report. What are they being asked about? And also, when were they being asked? Because our
Basically, she's basically saying the quiet part out loud in regards of, yeah, Gavin Newsom, taking what you're saying, hypothetically, okay, you have nothing to hide. Just because you're not guilty directly and which it prones an investigation to you directly, doesn't mean you cannot be guilty and held accountable by association for what you know what was going on as a leader and a public official, let alone supposed to be serving Californians, aka American taxpayers and American people, but guilty by association for the corruption, as he mentioned, from the founding fathers that wanted it to be prevented in your orbit. So you can still be guilty and held accountable by association, because you should know better, as being basically like the mini president of the state of California, which is one of the biggest in the country, biggest state, you know?
sources have suggested there hasn't been recent activity related to these cases, but the governor's office saying something completely different, saying that some of this has happened in recent times. So we're trying to nail down the timeline and understand exactly what is going on here.
So there you have it, family. And I believe it's just individuals shooting themselves in the foot based on their own action. I don't really think it has nothing to do with Trump. If anything, they're just giving Trump open documentation as they're doing the very quiet part out loud and not even hiding things anymore, because they have gotten so spoiled with having their way alongside corruption. But all of this, let the investigation playing out, right? Innocent until proven guilty. But just seeing a pattern with Eric Swalwell, and then you got Graham Plattner, who's over there in a different state. I believe he's in the state of Maine. Just, you know, their own actions, basically deeming them to be guilty. But as all this is all alleged, let the investigation play out, as I would say. The rules have to be the same for the person in the governor's mansion as they are for everyone else, is what I will say. Full stop. Proverbs chapter 11, verse 3 says, "The integrity of the upright guides them, but the crookedness of the treacherous destroys them." Let me know what you think in the comments. Hit the like button, share the video, subscribe to the channel, turn on your post notifications, spread the peace, love, and positivity, and let the love supersede the hate, family. Peace.